Hey there guys, what's going on? Snoo here. Welcome back to the channel. Here it is, the long-awaited mercenary video, the Merc I'm using and why. I'm running a physical to cold conversion tornado shot build with heat shiver for extra fire, unlocks Trinity support, and that is a major player in why I went with the Merc I decided to use. Frost Ambusher is the Merc type, and it mainly hinges on the effectiveness of Skitterbots with the brand new belt, which really helps improve Scorch, Shock, for my build especially, and Chill, which obviously helps with Heat Shiver, bringing that online more easily, regardless of how tanky an enemy might be. And so that is the Merc's primary function, its elemental ailments. It's also doing some other things, like it has the Garb of Ephemeral, which is crit immunity, and then action speed immunity to reductions of action speed, terrific for tier 17s, especially tier 17 Delirious. And there's several other things going on. There's a little bit of other defenses there, as well as reducing enemies' resistances. That's a major thing the Merc is doing too. And so we're going to spend this video talking about how that's going. I'm going to show you an Uber Boss kill with and without it. I'm going to show you the PoE with and without all his buffs, which is something I don't normally do. And yeah, we'll talk about his gear and everything that comes with it. Here's the item that brings everything together, and the real reason why I like this Merc so much. The Arkhon's tools, I think, are a brand new belt this league, and so this is actually the only way in the entire game to increase the effectiveness of your mercenary skitterbots. You'll see that he does have summon skitterbots as a skill that's required, and then the belt helps boost it a lot. And this is doing some pretty amazing things, which I'll just kind of get out of the way real quick. So first of all, it's adding a Scorch bot. That's a 17% Scorch, and that's all elemental ailments reduced below. Remember, with Heat Shiver and everything, I'm doing cold and fire. I am doing some lightning. The only lightning I have is the implicit on this quiver. More on this quiver at a later date. What it's also doing is improving my shocks a lot. So take a look at this. The Warden has Oath of Spring, okay? So I'm not really a shock-based build. I'm doing a little bit of lightning damage to get a lot of stacks of those 2% shocks, and that works really nicely with Tornado Shot. But I can only reach or crest out at about 100% total effectiveness of shock. Not the case with that belt, with the Merc's belt here. That's an extra 30% tacked on top of my 98% because one of my stacks gets removed. So it's 128% effective shock. That's basically triple the shock effect of a normal build that is prioritizing lightning and shock, can't even go cold and fire. So that's really, really powerful. And the other thing is Chill, which is almost the most important one of all, because what that does is it really helps bring Trinity online through Heat Shiver by allowing me to automatically chill any enemy in the game, no matter how tanky, how dangerous they are. Titanic Rogue Exiles, 80% Delirious, 100% Deli Magic Mobs, Uber Bosses, doesn't matter, getting 20% chill effect automatically. And that can really be the difference between having enough fire damage to make Trinity work, which dramatically scales my own damage. So this whole tech thing on this build, it works, but it can be a little tricky in certain scenarios, and this really helps smooth that out. I love it for that reason as well. So that's three reasons: Scorch, Shock, and Chill, all major players being granted automatically, is doing huge benefits for this build. So now we're going to take a look at some of this in action by showcasing an Uber Exarch kill without and then with the Merc. Here it is without. This is just me, the damage that my build does without a mercenary. See, not too bad. But here, let's rewind the tape real quick, and I'll show you what's going on here under the hood so we can get a better sense of the difference between just me and me with the mercenary. The main thing I want to show you is Trinity, okay? So you're going to see this is kind of an ongoing theme about Trinity and how it can be a little bit of a precarious thing to make it work through the Heat Shiver. And so you'll see that Trinity doesn't even fully proc until after the boss is dead. Now, to be fair, Uber Exarch is a particularly hard boss to make this work with my setup because he actually has extra fire resistance, so it's really working against me. But it does eventually proc in full after he's already dead. And so that doesn't really work. And yeah, I mean, it looks like a pretty fast kill otherwise, but I'm really hamstringing myself by the fact that I don't have Trinity up. And the main reason that is because while I am chilling him, and I'm definitely freezing him, my chill is only 15%. I capped out. I guess my hardest hitting cold hit was 15% chill, and that's even with 100% shock effect, no Scorch, that is with Sniper's Mark, and I have Elemental Weakness as well, and that is basically the full setup that I have going on here. Here we have the exact same boss, same kill, Uber Exarch, with the Mercenary active, the one that we're talking about. And so we'll go ahead and let it play out. We'll see the kill in full, and then again, take a look at what's going on under the hood. Let's rewind it here. Very first thing you'll notice is immediately upon entering combat, Skitterbots is active. 20% chill, 30% shock, 17% scorch. That's a full 5% chill higher than I had on my own. So, I mean, you already know that's going to have a pretty profound impact on damage right out the gate. The extra 30% shock gets overlaid with my own 98% shock later on. You'll see that's 128% shock, pretty amazing there. And then the scorch is there the entire time. And so it shouldn't come to a major surprise the fact that Trinity procced way earlier, and it's fully active when the boss is still at 80% life. So, I mean, that's just awesome right then and there. And I know this is an Uber boss. It's a single target thing in maps. This isn't nearly as big of a deal, but there are actually some scenarios where I've noticed, especially without the Merc, before I had this Merc, Trinity wasn't always on, even in maps. Like, it is a little bit of an issue trying to get it active. The build does so much damage when it's there. It's just one of those things where to make it fully activate, it can be a little tricky. And so that's why I went with this Merc, and so it's helping me do that, and you can see it play out in real time here. Also, the Merc is providing flammability, which is dramatically helping me get that extra fire. So it's not just what he's doing with the Skitterbots. There's other things in play, which we'll discuss more throughout the video. Let's have a look at all the skills that we have going on. So you'll notice at the very bottom, I guess I'm missing a skill. I think I'm missing a travel skill or something. Not that big of a deal. We have Grace. Now, some of you, if I don't say this, I think some of you who might try to find this Mercenary might make a big deal about how difficult it is to find this exact version. Grace is really not that important. You might be surprised to hear me say that. For this build, I'm freezing everything. Most dangerous mechanics are delirium, or things that can't be evaded anyway. Yes, it's making me go from like 55 to 70% chance to evade. It's very nice, but I would have had this Merc whether this had Grace or not. It just so happened to have it as well. And for sure, I would have kept looking for an upgrade from to have Grace. So I'm blessed the fact that he came with everything on here, including Grace. I just want to point out, it's actually maybe the least important skill on the entire list. And hopefully you understand why in a second. The most important one is summon Skitterbots. We already talked about why that's important, and so that helps bring on the Archon's tools, which, yes, you need to have the Skitterbot skill active in order to make this work. Now, the other three are also quite important. I got pretty lucky here and got the holy trinity of all three forced chill effect debuffs that this Mercenary does. There's a reason why I'm not doing a shock ambusher or blade ambusher. I'm doing a frost ambusher because while 20% chill is nice from the belt, I really want to maximize it. I really want it to be 30% if possible. I couldn't quite get there. I got to 29%, which we'll see on the gear. But just take note that the Merc himself has the ability to chill enemies on top of the Skitterbots. So the Skitterbots come in, and AoE automatically applies 20% chill. And then the Merc, when he starts hitting things with his Creeping Frost Trap, his Greater Vortex Trap, or even inside the Frost Shield, which is honestly kind of nice for me to stand in there too, if it so happens to be there. So he's already getting chilled out as well. And again, it doesn't matter how hard the Merc hits, because this Merc obviously doesn't hit very hard. These are sort of area of effect chills they automatically apply. It's very important here that one or more of these has ailment effect, and so this goes from an automatic 10% to, in this case, 14% chill. It can go up to 15% chill with greater ailment effect. Now onto the gear. We already talked about the belt, so we don't need to discuss that one anymore. Let's get one of the big ones out of the way here. Garb of the Ephemeral. This doesn't have anything to do with my damage. It's the only piece of gear in here that really isn't about damage. It's about defense. Crit immunity and immunity to action speed reductions. Huge for Delirium, huge for tier 17 mods like the Drowning Orbs, like the 3% reduced action speed per skill used recently. Oh my god, that's so bad if you score that mod without this belt. For the Wildwood, the Darkness, you'd be surprised at how nice quality of life that is. So there are a great many things that reduce your action speed down, and this basically removes all of that. It's a surprisingly high range on this. Look at this. So you'll see the Garb of the Ephemeral buff, not to mention Perkles. It definitely extends pretty far, at least half a screen, and the Merc does a pretty good job standing near me. I can always kind of order him to me if I need to necessarily. So Garb of the Ephemeral, huge, and you know there are a lot of very competitive belt options, as you guys know, but this is one of the best ones for sure. Perhaps the only other defensive piece of gear would be Vixen's Entrapment. So these gloves aren't anything super special, mainly they're just here to grant additional curse and be able to get me enfeeble onto the build. So that's just automatically making enemies do less damage. This is boosted with an increased 20% effectiveness. Keep in mind this is level 1 enfeeble, but it is improved a little bit through a series reflection. Quite a nice option on here because it makes the Merc way tankier as well. Incidentally, my Merc didn't die a single time in 100 Wildwoods of Titanic, of Legend, Ghosted, Wildwooded Rogue Exiles. I was quite surprised. Not even one death. He has died before, mainly on the Abomination boss room in 100% deli, but that's about the only thing that kills him. So quite impressed there. I'd like to think that Series Reflection is helping keep him alive a little bit, but other than this shield, there's really not that much in the way of defensive options. Now, you've got one other curse, and that is this one here, Flammability. So Flammability on hit is a guaranteed 100% chance, and this is actually kind of important here. It's something, probably the most advanced tech going on in the Merc. It's the fact that he has Flammability on hit, and then he has a supercharged cold exposure with a 25% chance to hit. What this does, and how this probably applied on that Uber boss kill you saw, is that Flammability went up first, and then the cold exposure went up after, and that gave me a split-second window of opportunity to do way more fire damage than cold damage, which is all I need in order to bring Trinity online. This doesn't matter a whole lot in maps because, you know, you're killing all kinds of things everywhere, but in terms of single target on a really tanky enemy, like Uber Searing Exarch, that's kind of a big deal. And it is by design, the fact that he's dramatically lowering enemies' fire res with a 100% chance on hit, and then dramatically lowering their cold res with a less than 100% chance on hit to just create that tiny window of opportunity for me to unlock more fire damage than cold damage, you know, to get the Heat Shiver Trinity in action. The other ring is here for the increased non-damaging ailments. You'll notice that this ring also had 25% increased effect of non-damaging ailments. We got another 25 here. And let's kind of speed run through the rest of this. The boots got sap. Okay, he moves around with sap. Not that useful. I can command him to me and get that sapped ground on there, which is nice. The increased effect of non-damaging elements works for that too. A little bit of survivability stuff here, but mainly 40% increased effect of non-damaging elements. That is a chosen mod there. And then it's also got the implicit here, corruption for cold ailments, as well as Perkless Toe, which is obviously just a nice choice. Additional curse, and then flash freeze, 30% increased effect of cold ailments. So what do we have? We have 25, 50, 90, and then we have 120 and 150. Okay, 150% increase effect of cold ailments on top of 14% chill equals 29% chill. That's the highest I can get, I'm aware of. 29% chill, 1% away from perfect. Really, really nice for making that Heat Shiver work as well as it can. And then Toolborn, I kind of scrolled over this, is giving me a more impactful cold exposure. Again, not 100% chance on hit, but obviously it does apply fairly quickly. Also nice to just do some cold damage, but I don't think the damage really matters. AoE is kind of a nice implicit here to add in. I mean, it's just something, but really it's about the extra cold exposure. So that is all the gear. Crafting the gear, I guess the only piece to really craft is the rings. I mean, they're not super important, just the things that I mentioned here, and then get some defensive mods. You can see I have a few wasted mods. And then the boots was, yeah, the chosen mod is the really important one here. So it's actually not that hard to replicate this gear. If I didn't have additional curse perkles, which is pretty expensive, I would just anoint Whispers of Doom, or I would maybe just have these gloves, but not the Enfeeble instead. Here's the Merc stats, and you'll see that his survivability is not that amazing. I hit the bases, right? Okay, if he has elemental weakness, well, actually, he takes no effect of elemental weakness, so he's curse immune. But anyway, fully res capped, and a little bit of evasion, a little bit of energy shield, a little bit of life. I forgot to mention that he also does have some spell leech, which is kind of cool. Energy shield leech, what I mean to say. A little bit of life regen. But yeah, really surprised the Merc survivability. I think it's just a testament to the old saying, the best defense is more offense. And so when my character freezes and kills as fast as it does, it really helps protect my Merc from dying. You'd be surprised. Now, I'll do some other content and maybe we'll see his survivability come into question. I might have to sort of reinvent some of his gear, but for now, you can see that this Merc is very much focused on just improving my build. He's not got very much in the way of his own thing, not improving his own defenses at all. Hardly at all. and just increasing my damage through reducing enemies' resistances, getting me amazing elemental ailments out, giving me some added defenses through Enfeeble and the Garb of the Ephemeral. That's it. Let's have a look at Path of Building, check some of the numbers, and let you see exactly what all of this mercenary is doing for me by taking a look at some of the numbers. The numbers don't tell you everything, but anyway, this is another Path of Building that I will have linked down below. This is the only time that I'm going to give you a POB like this where we actually uncheck some of the buffs that the Merc is doing. Real quick to point out, this is the exact build that I was doing for 100 Wildwoods of Titanic Rogue Exiles. Everything's exactly the same. The only major difference is that this is now configured for an Uber Boss kill. And so, you know, like only 15 Rage, for example, 29% Chill, because that's what the Merc gives me, not 30%, and Uber Pinnacle Boss, and you can see the damage is there. Now, in the custom modifiers, just as a reminder, Flask effect applied to you have increased effect. This is from this mastery that's not effective, so that's always there. But everything else below this is mercenary tech. And so let's first take a look at this here. You can see there's a little bit of an issue with fire top end, cold bottom end. They're a little close together. Seem to work out all right. That's assuming I can get 29% chill. If you start lowering this number much, you're going to see that squeeze real tight. And so you'll be able to make sense of why it's so important to have the enemy frozen and chilled to the max, basically. So let's go down and let's find out what happens here. First of all, we have Skitterbots Shock. Okay, that's an extra 28% increased damage taken from enemies. That's a nice damage increase there. We have monsters lose some elemental resistance there. I forgot to mention this on the gear, the Eye of Malice, the helmet option. I'll change that in a second here, but this is 50% increase fire and cold resistances. This is a multiplier, 50% multiplier to whatever the resistance is, whether it's negative or positive. It can be a nice pseudo replacement for the Doryani Merc, which we'll talk a little bit about at the end of the video on why I'm not going with that. But I'll save that for a second so you can see it really spike the damage. Okay, we are getting Tollborn's cold exposure. We got exposures from the helmet already. We got flammability with 20% increased effectiveness, so that's 20% fire res on hit. And we got Enfeeble with the 20% increased effectiveness. We got Perkle's Toe. Hits are lucky. We got the Garb of the Ephemeral buffs here. That's nice. And then we have Grace Aura, which I think this is the right numbers. I don't know. It's pretty close. And then up here is the final thing I'll do. We're going to see even an Uber Boss take more damage from this. Only a little bit more damage. Now, what you'll find is that a normal enemy takes way more damage when this is active there. But an Uber Boss, even a little bit more. Okay, and so everything is now active, and you'll see that I'm doing, I don't know, around 70 or 80% more damage. And the funny thing is you know, it's not that much better than Doryani Merc anyway, if you go and you start playing around with the numbers in a major way, and that's without the crazy workaround you would have to do for this build with Admiral's Chest and everything. But more on that later. So here is everything up, and you can see in the calculations that it looks a little bit more appealing here with the higher fire and the lower cold. This is especially the case, especially if I go in for that brief second and I remove even both exposures, you'll see that it's far better, okay? And hopefully this helps you make sense of how the fire damage really does have a pretty good chance of beating the cold damage, even with Perkle's Toe, the lucky multiplier from the neck, which can work against me a little bit there. But guys, yeah, that's the Path of Building for this version of the build. This is with an Uber Boss and with a Mercenary active. Before we go, I think we'll give a little honorable mention to my Blade Ambusher here, which I never actually set up, but I did get him because I got a pretty killer one here. Also, Grace summoned Skitterbots, level 84 too. That's kind of nice. Does not improve the Skitterbots, by the way, when it's level 84. But Trarthran Agility. Okay, now this is an action speed aura. It's 10% by default. I think it can have increased effect, but it can have increased duration and reduced cooldown. At best, you'll have like a 50% uptime on this. Without any of these supports, it'll have less than 50%. Its aura range is also very small and doesn't seem to be affected by increased AoE, from what I can tell. So I was a little bit bummed out on that, because you would think a 10% action speed aura buff, I mean, hell, that alone is almost seemed to be worth the Mercenary right then and there. So the fact that you can do Skitterbots and that, this is a decent second option. So for anyone who's trying to kind of replicate what I'm doing, definitely take a look at the blade ambushers as well and use this one in the meantime. If you get Dwarf and Agility, which is always there, and Skitterbots by itself, that's a pretty decent start. The other major player that hasn't been mentioned yet is the Doryani Merc. So this is the one people ask me about, and the big reason why I'm not using it is because I'm not a lightning build, okay? This is the only lightning damage I'm doing is right here on the implicit on this quiver. And so I'm primarily focused on cold, and I got the shocks. I'm not doing Oath of Summer, but through Heat Shiver, it's cold and fire. It's just all cold and fire, and you get to see it in the path of building. And so in order for me to make use of a Doryani Merc on a Warden, the only way for that to make sense is if I either switch to Deadeye, which would definitely make a little more sense, or if I went the Admiral Body Armor. Now, the Admiral Body Armor makes it so all resistances, it looks at all resistances, not just lightning, in terms of the monster negative res. And unfortunately, there's just no way around this. This body armor, okay, I'm not going to go into detail about this body armor, but if you know anything about builds, you'll realize very quickly this body armor is doing yeoman's work, okay? This thing is some crazy heavy lifting on here between the hatred effect, the flask effect, hitting breakpoints on that, the elemental ailment avoidance, stun avoidance, all the res, the suppress capping, the huge amount of life. That's a pretty insanely useful body armor, and I just can't justify it. And when I check in Path of Building, even when I go into custom mods and I reduce a monster's elemental res by 300% or whatever, it's not that much more amazing than what I'm already doing. So I think I'll just stick with this. Doryani Merc's pretty cool. I understand it's insanely powerful for a lot of builds. For this one, I don't think it's going to work out that well. So guys, that's it on the Mercenary for this Tornado Shot Warden. I really like it. I did take a little bit of inspiration in the beginning by taking a look at some of the spreadsheets on useful items, particularly useful items for mercenaries. I did see a Skitterbots belt here, and that I just ran with it from there. You know, I just kind of looked at all the different options and things I could do, and saw there were 3 different mercs that had Skitterbots and figured out which one would be best. And I really like how this is all set up, especially with the helmet is sort of a pseudo replacement for Doryani. A little bit with that special mod on the fire and cold res reduction. Still getting to keep in these couple of really powerful options like this neck and this body armor. I feel blessed the fact that he has survivability that he does, because that would seem to be the greatest weakness of this Merc, is a terrible lack of survivability. But, you know, the character's strengths seem to help overcome that issue for the Mercenary as well. So we make a great team, I think. And yeah, I can't really think of anything else to improve on this build. But for sure, because I haven't looked at everything under the sun, maybe there's something you guys know of, certainly beyond the Doryani Merc option, something else that might work out well as well. One last shout out to the Eruptor, which was a Merc that I used a while back before starting this one. Really good for lower end gear. The flat fire damage from Flame Blink's pretty crazy. Kingmaker is insanely powerful and a pretty good option when I was using Elemental Hit of the Spectrum. If I had to do all that over again, I would probably take a Merc more like this and focus on trying to get every single ailment in play. Maybe with that special amulet that has the influx, the scorch, sap, and chill or brittle influx, or do something to try to get every single elemental ailment in play to really help boost up Elemental Hit of the Spectrum's damage through its special damage mod per elemental ailment on the enemy. So I might kind of look at that over again, but I haven't gone into detail on that, so I can't give you guys a blueprint for that. This is just the Merc that I'm using for the Tornado Shot swap. And yeah, if you have any other questions or any other suggestions, let me know in the comments section down below. Hopefully you got a lot of value out of this fairly short video. And yeah, that's my story. That's the Merc I'm going with. And that's everything about this Frost Ambusher. I'll see you guys in the next video.